Guys, I've talked at length on this channel about my woes with the deadlift, specifically in regards to the chronic injuries I've had that lasted a decade and sidelined my strongman career. It was the rock in my shoe. I always had to have one foot on the brakes because the chronic pain that would set me back for months at a time led to inconsistency in my pull. I was inefficient. I was uncertain. That was the worst part, getting my hands on the bar and never really knowing if the lift was going to go off the way I wanted it to. And thankfully, I got to the bottom of that. And then I was able to talk to a lot of people who went the same path. So I'm going to take what I learned the hard way and help out some of you guys. Some of you, if you are having pain, this is what I recommend you do. Even if you're not having pain, I do think this has a general preventative quality. And in any case, it's absolutely going to lead to a more efficient pull because you're not going to be leaking force transfer as your spine whips around like one of those wacky inflatable arm guys that they put outside of used car dealerships. I know somebody's going to swoop in and start citing injury rates from powerlifting, and as a 20-year strongman competitor, I have to roll my eyes at that because powerlifters just have to manage their deadlifts. In strongman, we have to deadlift for max, for reps at different heights with different implements, with cleans and stone loads and farmer walks and yokes and all kinds of shit that we don't have the option of skipping. And if we get sidelined in one thing, that sidelines all of our training. It's much more devastating. There is absolutely a trend of people wearing themselves down by not paying attention to certain things. So let's start with what people do and why it sucks. There's three big things. The first one, people just don't think about it. Why would you think about it? Just cross your fingers, get your hands on the bar. The human body adapts, bro. This is not how any sport treats any of its skills ever. There is always an assumption that there is something that looks like a more efficient position and more efficient cueing that's going to lead to a better outcome. With lifting weights, the big thing to think about, like I said, is force transfer. All the force you apply standing on your own 2 feet has to travel up through your spine. Most efficient force transfer comes when everything is rigid. So you go up, the weight goes up. If you go up, the spine gives, weight doesn't go up. That's wasted effort. That is the worst possible way to lift anything in any scenario ever. There are a lot of people who think that not really worrying about it is fine and more people are better off if they just get in and pull and don't think about it. And technique is just an annoying barrier to entry that's keeping away the scared new lifters that are like baby deer. And if you hit them with standards, they're going to just shuttle off and never come back again. Well, if maximizing your spread of the gospel of lifting is your primary concern, I could see that. However, that's not mine. I like standards. Now, the second type of lifter is one that puts the focus on anywhere else but their midsection. These are people that are leading with like their chest, their shoulders, their upper back, their head. In football, that was one of the first cues I ever got, was like head up, big chest, as if the small muscles up here just need to like guide the rest of the big muscles that are working at their limit in order to get them into the right position. This kind of assumes that a good position is just a matter of cueing, like tricking you into the position. You just have to remember how to get there. That might be helpful to get somebody into position, but once they're loaded with a shit ton of weight, they have to know how to cue to keep that position and they have to be strong enough to keep it. And that requires the things that I'm going to recommend after this. Now, the third type of person is the archer. You don't see people really do the big arch as much anymore, but this was all over the fucking place through the 90s and 2000s when Westside was dominating lifting technique.
Chuck will stand up by arching his chest and straightening his legs. Now notice when Chuck squats, he will take air into the chest and stomach, pushing on the belt, pushing the knees apart. And to come up, he arches his back.
Big arch, the sticking the chest out, squeezing erectors as hard as you can, like somebody shoving a spike in your lower back. All of that was done to maximize artificial passive tension, to just stretch the muscles out as much as possible. And it did that, but it's like a dysfunctional, kind of less useful way to get support at the bottom of a lift. And when wrapped with multiple layers of like Kevlar denim equipment that requires 1,200 pounds to get you to depth, that's an entirely different game than what most lifters are trying to get into. And you might get really strong in that position and be able to stop right where that tension kicks in. But what if you can't quite get depth? What if you have to be strong in much more awkward positions? A lot of the guys that maximize that got very tight, very bound, and developed hip dysfunction. Remember, we were treated not that long ago to Dave Tate's Unfuck My Hips and Spine series, where he was trying to get worked on to work past all that stuff.
The last time I can remember being pain-free would be in the 90s. So we had a conversation that kind of sparked more of this answer, is I may not even know what feeling good feels like.
Now, mechanically, the arch flares the ribs, stretches out the abdominals. It points the diaphragm up, which points it away from the pelvis, which is pointing down. So where you should have your diaphragm and your pelvic floor stacked on top of each other, we have this soda can analogy where we get this nice, even, symmetrical distribution of pressure. Instead, it dents the can, and it doesn't look stable in practice. It's probably not as stable, especially when you take into account the role of the abdominals in maintaining tension, not just the lower back. It also stretches the main movers, the glutes and the hamstrings. If you don't believe me, stand up, lock your knees, stick your butt out like Daisy Duck, and see if you don't feel a stretch in your hamstrings. That stretch puts you in a weaker position at the start. It also limits your range of motion. When you start out like that, it's harder to get depth, which is exactly why guys did it that way. So for all these reasons, I think that is the worst way to train. So this is what I recommend and what I had to do in order to get past my issues that plagued me for so long. Remembering the guy wire analogy, you have a spine, think of it like a cable tower, and you get these bands pulling on the front and back, side to side, and it is the opposing tension that causes that cable tower to be able to stand upright and bear so much weight without falling over. So that means that your erectors need to be strong, but also your abdominals need to be strong to counter that. To get that circumferential pressure, the obliques need to be strong. I think of them as snapping your ribs down into your hips, because this compression down is actually what squeezes you, creates this compression, makes you very, very rigid. Whereas when you arch, you get longer, you get taller, you get put into an easier position to break. What we want to think about is starting with that posture, learning what that feels like. Quads tight to lock the knees, glutes tight to tuck the hips, and ribs down, keeping your abs tight to keep your spine neutral. So from this position, you're gonna pull in, tense your abdominals, and then you're gonna lock your lats and obliques down into your hips. Imagine that cue when you're going to grab a deadlift, how your lats and obliques lock you down. The same thing applies to a squat. So with good posture, hips and spine neutral, and with good bracing, glutes, abs tight, lats and obliques locked down, we can pull the abs in, tense them, virtually like we're doing a standing crunch, and then start to breathe deeply into those tensed abs. So what you're gonna notice when you do this right is as you pull the abs in, I call it cannonball breathing, okay? Think about breathing as if you're about to take a cannonball to the gut. You get that cannonball breathing down, abs tense, you start to breathe into the tensed abs. That pressure is gonna come out towards your lower back, and it's gonna come eventually up into your rib cage. Now, because most people don't breathe properly, you might even notice that you feel tension up in your neck and up around your shoulders. That's your rib cage trying to fully expand and accommodate a full breath of air in a way that it's not used to. You're quickly going to say, oh shit, I've never felt this before. Now the drills to work this, you want to start small. Starting with posture and positioning, you want your lower back supported. So usually people start on the floor, either a McGill curl up. I like 90-90 breathing because you don't have to worry about keeping your posture. In that position, all you do is focus on bringing your ribs in. You're not actually doing a sit up. You're just bringing your ribs down, feeling your abdominals tense. You're squeezing it just like you would squeeze your bicep if you were flexing. And you exhale out. Knees, this is about a normal squat stance for me. Actively grabbing with my heel, my pinky toe, my big toe, I'm cupping the wall and I'm trying to ground my feet into the wall. Okay, I'm maintaining tension and position here. I have my head back. Now, first thing I do is I tense the abdominals, thinking about bringing the ribs down, locking my ribs into my hips. You've been using your fingers to feel the tension to make sure you're tight. And from there, I'm gonna lock down. I'm gonna do a 5-second breath out. I'm gonna do a 5-second breath in, resisting with my abdominals as deep as I can get. And ready. And then again. So you can probably see I'm already starting to shake. This is a work in progress. I've gotten a lot better at it. It is still not easy. It is not easy at all. And this is something that you need to run through over and over, make a daily habit. And as it gets better, you're able to exhale longer, take more breaths. You can be dang sure that your midsection is getting stronger, your posture is getting better, your movement mechanics will be getting better. Face is turning red, blood pressure and heart rate are up, it feels like shit. And again, that should worry you that you're not able to do that. An easy progression is to drill the 90-90 breathing for several weeks. As you get comfortable with it, feel like you can do it for longer and gain more breaths in each round. Start to apply this to planks where you're actually supporting your weight, front planks, side planks. Then you can do standing variations where you're offset, anti-rotation movements, one arm, suitcase carries, waiter carries, and even regular carries in the front. I do weighted carries with my child. I strap him in to his harness and we go for walks around the neighborhood. And I noticed that just trying to brace with all 18 pounds of him in front of me is extremely hard and my abs start quivering and cooking. And then eventually, as you take that, you build it up into the lifts. Again, you're going to find that you just do so much better. Of course, I have to say, no, you're not going to fall apart if you don't do this. No, it's not mandatory that everybody does this. I just tend to think that it's going to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. And of all the people who take this approach, much fewer of them are likely to have problems than the people that don't think about it at all. I can't work around the logic that would not have that be the case. Paying attention to something more valuable and a better preventative measure than not paying attention to anything at all. Now, it's really easy to do in a warm-up. You can do it at home, before you go to bed, when you have downtime, but just make it a staple. Get in so many breaths before you start your workouts. You're not going to get this down immediately, but over time, you start applying this patterning to your other lifts, and you're going to notice that you have an extra handle. You have an extra lever that you can pull, something extra to grab onto to feel security when you're lifting. And if you've ever struggled with these issues with lower back pain or uncertainty, it is going to blow your goddamn mind that you were never taught this before. Because how does it make sense to teach somebody to try to lift so much weight to push their limits, but completely ignore a primary part of the body responsible for dealing with so much load around the area where all the injuries happen? It doesn't make any sense, and that's what I got pissed off at, because a little bit of work in the beginning, a little bit of prevention would have saved me a ton of pain, and my competitive career probably would have been a lot further along. So my hope is that somebody out there listening to this benefits from this information, can put this into practice, and then start getting strong again. Hopefully this helps some of you guys out there or prevents other problems that would have had you go sideways. So that's all I got to say about this. Let me know your experience with your lower back, with pulling, with mechanics around your midsection. Have you had problems? Have you tried any of these? What did it do? Leave it in the comments. Go ahead and check out basestrength.com. All of my musings, my philosophy, my thoughts on programming are getting put into text. I'm updating the blog daily at this point. Follow me on Instagram, head over to Facebook, the Base Strength page. If you have questions about the app, we're answering it there. Very robust community. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.